One name I'm particularly intrigued about because he didn't play on Wednesday night. He kind of got the similar treatment that Ben Chiarot got earlier in the week before he got traded, which is to not play and be held out as a healthy scratch. And that's Mark Giordano, who was obviously a member right now of the Seattle Kraken, unless something has happened by the time you listen to this podcast. I'm curious what you think will happen to him.
Well, what's notable about it is they were honoring him for his 1,000th game.
Yes.
So it's not a game you're looking to sit the guy out. Now, the word from the team, multiple sources of the team, it's just preventative. It's just maintenance. It wasn't a sign that anything's imminent. But I think it's clear with Chiarot moving that there's, that some of the same teams that would like a Ben Chiarot would be in on a Mark Giordano. Not the exact same player, but plays a similar position. And, there's only so much you can get on defense. I mean, there's still Hampus Lindholm. Now he's a different style player. Maybe John Klingberg, although Dallas doesn't seem inclined to trade him. Then you get in maybe the next tier of guys. But, it gets kind of, we'll see what happens with Chychrun. I'm sure you'll ask me about him during trading pile. But, there's only a few players. And so this is, pure asset management. And yes, it's not a surprise nor a secret that Mark Giordano will be traded by Monday's deadline. His situation is a little interesting with his cap hit. I would think that he's a player that's going to need to be traded through a third-party team, have double retention on the salary. And with that in mind, I think that, at this stage, it does seem as though that he's one of the fits that the Toronto Maple Leafs are looking at.
You said the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Right. Well, look, it's no mystery they're looking for defense. I think they're looking to change in some ways. We were talking earlier with Chiarot. I think they're looking to change maybe a little bit of the makeup of their blue line. The beauty with Giordano and is that, he played a long time and quite successfully with TJ Brody, who's a member of the Leafs. I'm not saying they necessarily reunite that pair where he brought in, but I think the option would be there. He's a competitive guy. And I think that's what the Leafs are looking for on their blue line. They do have puck movers. They have offensively skilled players. You have Morgan Riley there, Rasmus Sandin. It's pretty good in that department. I think that they'll be looking for not necessarily not in the Ben Chiarot style hard nose, but players that do play hard in terms of how they dig in. And so Giordano definitely is a fit and a potential for the Leafs. Not to say he'll go there because, one thing I believe that the Leafs are telling teams is they're not trading their first round pick, at least not for a rental. And so that could be, where this type of deal could get hung up, because I think if you're Seattle and you see the Chiarot return, you're saying, okay, we want something similar than that. Not the same player, again, older for Giordano and a little bit more complicated because he earns more money than Chiarot does. But I do think Seattle will try to get that first. I don't believe the Leafs will trade their first for a rental. I think if you see the Leafs trade a first-round pick, it's because they're making a larger deal, maybe with a player with some term, more of a hockey-type trade, we might call it, than just a pure deadline move. And so, that's kind of where I see that one on the precipice right now. But certainly, he's someone the Leafs have had an eye on. There's talk of Carolina liking him. I don't necessarily see the fit as much with the Hurricanes. Remember that Ron Francis was their former GM. Didn't last long after Tom Dundon was taken over as the owner. So can't imagine he's too eager to do him any favors. But maybe if the best offer comes from the Hurricanes, that's where he ends up. Boston's in the market for a left shot D. There's other teams that fit here for Giordano, maybe even the Rangers. But if I had to say it, I would say that he's probably right at the top of the Leafs wish list here as we get to the weekend.
Okay. What about Claude Giroux, who we mentioned earlier? Two teams we keep bringing up are Colorado and Florida. Is there like a third team that might kind of swoop in at the last second and say, hey, we're interested in him too?
The only other team that I've heard out there in recent days is St. Louis. And, I don't know if that one makes sense totally. Like if you look at the Blues lines, there's not an obvious place for Giroux to fit. I mean, I understand he's a player that a lot of teams would just like as a player that conceptually he could fit with the style they play. But, I'd be surprised if that ends up being the case. But that, other teams, I'm not hearing that from the Blues, but I'm hearing that from other teams. I think the Blues are there. But really, if we're being realistic, I think it will come down to Colorado and Florida. And, yeah, there's a trade package. Typically when you're talking about two teams down to it on a player, it's what what can the Flyers do best with? But the truth is Claude Giroux really pulls the strings here by having a no move clause and the ability to name where he goes and plays. And so, I think a lot of it rests with him. And as we're recording this, he's going later Thursday night into his 1000th game with the Flyers. My impression has been that that's really been where his focus has been. I think that's where the team's focus has been. I know he's got a number of family and friends down from Hearst, Ontario, home to our buddy Pierre LeBrun.
Hey.
But he's got a big army of people in town to celebrate his 1000th game with one franchise. So I think that's where his energy and mindset has been focused on. And then as soon as they get through that Thursday, I would expect that he'll get around to sort of sorting through his options, maybe having discussions with those teams, with the coaches or management, what have you, to see where the fit is and decide what's best for him and his family.
Okay. What about Jacob Chychrun?
Interesting case, right? He suffered an ankle injury last weekend. The team announced he'd be out 2 to 4 weeks. It sounds like Chychrun went this week for a second opinion, and it came back maybe a little bit more optimistic in terms of timeline. And he's going to try to skate again before the end of the weekend to see where he's at. I don't think the injury, certainly there's no thought the injury is so serious that it's going to take him right off the trade market, but it might back some teams off, especially those that are, seeing Jacob Chychrun's got multiple years on his deal. He's a young player. You're acquiring him not for the short term. You view him as someone who can be part of your team for a while here, but you might also be trying to be better for this year's playoffs. And so I think that those teams are going to need to see some of the what's going on with the medical report there before making that deal. But it still sounds like there's a chance he's dealt. I think it's become a little less likely because of that injury. Now, this is a reminder why you see Ben Chiarot, Mark Giordano held out of games. We'll see other guys, no doubt, held out of games as we get through the next few days here, because, if he was a rental, it might completely blow up the market on him. But, I think the Bruins are still a team to watch with Chychrun, as are the LA Kings. Both those teams have really been on him from the beginning. And, I still think that there's at least 80% odds, I'll call it, maybe 70% to be a little bit more conservative, that he's moved. But it became a little less certain just because of that health situation that's cropped up. But, the good news is it doesn't sound like it's that serious. He is going to try to skate. And I do know him and his agents and the team are willing to sort of work things through with any interested parties in terms of trying to ease their concerns about where he's at health-wise.
The next name on our list is Hampus Lindholm. What about him?
Big rental. I would have thought a month ago he was going to sign an extension in Anaheim. That hasn't happened. There really hasn't been much talk actually of late between the Ducks and his representative on a new contract. And so that points us in one direction and one direction only, that he'll follow Josh Manson out of town with it. Pat Verbeek, when he took over the Ducks job, said, if I'm not signing these guys, I'm not doing my job if I'm not getting assets for them. Like, he made it very clear he didn't want to have own rentals, as you might call them, even though the Ducks, they're within touch still of a playoff spot. It's clear the direction they're going. And so, Lindholm is someone, again, I think that he fits with some of the same teams I've mentioned on Giordano, just because he's a left shot D, whether it's Boston, perhaps Carolina jumps in and gets him. It's going to be a decent price on him. He plays a lot of minutes for Anaheim, but I think what'll be interesting, I guess, to see is does that deal happen as a pure rental, or is there an opportunity for the team trading for him, maybe to talk some extension and maybe ease their concerns about giving up a big package for him. I think that will be something to watch here in the coming days. I'm not sure how that's going to go, but it does seem as though his stint in Anaheim is coming to an end. Just that the Ducks were really wary with term. We saw Thomas Hertl at about the same age get an 8-year deal from San Jose. The Ducks were never willing to do something like an 8-year deal with Hampus Lindholm. And so, that ultimately, I think, is why that deal didn't get done, why he'll be traded out of town. And we might be talking about him again in July as one of the top free agents as well.